Sir Isaac Newton once famously wrote of his own scientific endeavours and discoveries in comparison to those of others. If I have seen a little further, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants. Given the use of the fingers on both my hands and a minute to do it in, I could readily list the names of a dozen people that I, for one reason or another, feel a deep intellectual or emotional kinship with and gratitude for. People without whom I would not have developed the qualities I value most in myself. The twist is, many of them are people I've never met. Some were dead before I was even born. These names might include philosophers, musicians, writers, scientists, and comedians, among other things. Having been born late in the previous century, a lot of the events, people, or concepts so significant to me come from generations other than my own. It's created an experience of looking at existence in the rearview mirror like a newly picked up hitchhiker. Seeing the sights pass by without having driven through them yourself. Certain examples are met fairly easily and don't require any adjustment. John Lennon's murder 3 years before my birth, for example, is a prominent piece of mental furniture in our culture. It's like a couch you've walked past every day of your life since you were an infant. These are the John Keats, the Vincent van Goghs, the Sylvia Plaths, and the James Deans of our history. And along with their influential talents, their status as dead people has always been part of their fame, from my birth onwards at least. In fact, in the case of a person like Van Gogh, it's likely that if I was alive in his time, I wouldn't have known who he was, and it's only my being alive so far after his death that allows me to witness his work so readily. What do require adjustments are the George Harrisons, the Katharine Hepburns, the George Carlins, and the Christopher Hitchens. To take Christopher's case specifically, I was already a young man in my mid-20s by the time I discovered his existence. I've only really investigated him or his work over the last few years, so my time of being consciously aware of sharing the world with him feels so brief. What I learned very quickly from him, though, is that rebellion and speaking out are powerful actions and skills. But you'd better do it with intelligence, you better be well informed, and you better do it with integrity and heart. Christopher Hitchens was a man famous for his intellect, his love of aggressive debate, and for some people simply famous as one of the most outspoken atheists today. It's probably convenient that I came to discover him around now other than any other time in my life. With his far-reaching vocabulary and experiences, however much I might have liked pieces of his work when I was younger, it's likely I wouldn't have understood half of his cultural or literary references. Christopher's knowledge encompassed a gargantuan amount of information. The consumption of it probably would rival the 12 labours of Hercules. Consider 3 names for a second: David Attenborough, Stephen Hawking, and Stephen Fry. Assuming I live long enough to meet the average Australian life expectancy rate, I will live to see a world without these 3 people in it. I could repeatedly read or watch YouTube content about them, and the world will literally change around me, going from a day where I'm watching a piece of the decade-spanning work of a living world presence to the next day where I'm watching the excerpt from the life of someone who used to be alive. All these people can be very distinctly defined as singularities. There will be no replacement for them once they've gone. If I was born 100 years of when I was, hitchhiking in an era beyond their deaths, would I still discover and be affected by them as much as I have been? Even having never met any of these people I've mentioned, I will still mourn the day they die, and I will mourn the days after their death, considering all the lessons I might have taken from them had they lived longer. Knowledge for its own sake is important to me. Regardless of if the studying you do will contribute to things like your chances of employment or income or not, acquiring new information in itself is inherently valuable and meaningful. I am the person I am right now just as much because of these people, these famous dead and dying people, than I am because of face-to-face teaching in a building somewhere. I'm constantly trying to learn to extend and build upon whatever I am at any point. And sometimes, if I'm lucky, it works. As I've mentioned, there are qualities that I do hold in myself that I treasure significantly. But if I have any knowledge, any wisdom, any courage, or any integrity, I assure you, it's because I was hitchhiking in the wake of giants. Thank you, Hitchens.